The asteroid belt was supposed to be empty. That's what Jiho liked about it. No pirates, no patrol ships asking questions, no problems. Just him, his small cargo ship, and the silent rocks floating in space. The morning star wasn't much to look at. She was old, patched in a dozen places, and her paint had worn off years ago. But she was his, paid for with 10 years of hard work and careful saving. Jiho loved every rusted panel of her. He was humming an old Earth song when the alarms started screaming. "What now?" Jiho muttered, pulling up the sensor display. His ship's computer, which he had named Hana after his grandmother, showed a blinking red dot ahead. "Distress signal detected," Hana's calm voice announced. "Origin unknown. Universal emergency codes confirmed." Jiho leaned forward in his worn pilot seat. Distress signals in the asteroid belt were rare. Most ships avoided this area completely. "Can you translate the message?" "Negative, language unknown, but emergency codes indicate critical life support failure. Estimated time until death. 14 minutes. 14 minutes. Jiho's hands moved across the controls before his brain caught up with his decision. He had to help. That's what humans did, wasn't it? They helped. The signal led him deeper into the asteroid field. Jiho had to fly carefully, dodging the spinning rocks. His ship was small and quick, but one wrong move would smash them both into dust. "There," he said, spotting something wedged into a crater on a large asteroid. It was a small escape pod, silver and shaped like a teardrop. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly in the darkness. The pod's lights were flickering. That was bad. Very bad. "Hana, can we get close enough to grab it?" Attempting to calculate a safe approach. A pause. "Captain, I must warn you. The pod's design is unknown. The occupant species is unknown. There could be diseases. There could be danger." Jiho was already putting on his spacesuit. "There's someone dying in there, Hana. We don't have time for what-ifs." He had done spacewalks before, but never in an asteroid field. Jiho clipped his safety line to the ship and pushed off gently. The pod was only 50 meters away, but in space that might as well be a mile. One wrong move and he'd float away forever. His magnetic boots clicked onto the pod's surface. Up close, he could see it was damaged badly. Something had torn through the side. Whatever had happened to this pod, it had been violent. "Life signs detected inside," Hana said in his helmet. "Very weak. Heart rate critical." Jiho found the emergency release and pulled. The pod's door hissed open, and a cloud of frozen air crystals burst out. Inside, strapped to a tiny seat, was a child. But this was no human child. The small being's skin looked like crystal, catching the distant starlight and breaking it into rainbow colors. She was beautiful and strange and very, very still. "Hey," Jiho said softly, even though she probably couldn't hear him. "Hey, kid, I've got you." He carefully unstrapped her and pulled her into his arms. She was cold. Too cold. Her chest barely moved. "Hana, the pod's life support is dead. I'm bringing her to the ship now." "Captain, the airlock cycle will take 2 minutes. Her oxygen won't last that long." "I know." Jiho looked at the small child in his arms. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old, whatever her species measured age. Her eyes were closed, her crystal skin growing dull. He made a decision that any safety manual would call insane. Jiho opened his own suit's oxygen feed and held the mask to the child's face. His suit's computer immediately started screaming warnings. He was giving away air he would need. "Breathe," he told her. "Come on, kid. Breathe." For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the child gasped. Her chest moved. Her skin brightened just a little. Jiho's own lungs started to burn. The walk back to his ship felt like crossing an ocean. His vision started to blur. The asteroid field spun around him, but he held on to the child and kept moving. The airlock doors closed behind them with a blessed hiss. Air flooded back. Jiho collapsed on the floor, still holding the child, both of them gasping. "Medical bay! Now!" he wheezed. He had never been so grateful for his small ship's basic medical bay. It wasn't much, just a bed and some emergency equipment, but it would have to do. Jiho laid the child down gently and started checking her vital signs. Her heartbeat was there but weak. Her body temperature was rising slowly. She was breathing on her own now, which was good. But Jiho had no idea what her normal vital signs should be. Was this crystal skin supposed to glow? Were her eyes supposed to be closed this long? "Hana, scan her. Tell me everything you can figure out." The ship's medical scanner hummed. "Species unknown. Biology partially compatible with oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere. Body temperature stabilizing. No immediate life threat detected. However, she is in shock and extremely weak." Jiho covered the child with a thermal blanket and sat beside her. She looked so small and fragile, despite being made of crystal. He found himself humming the same Earth song from earlier, an old lullaby his mother had sung to him. The child's eyes flickered. For just a moment they opened. They were deep blue, like Earth's oceans. She looked at Jiho and he could see fear there, but also relief. She knew she was safe now. "It's okay," Jiho said quietly. "You're safe. I promise." The child's hand moved slightly, reaching toward him. Jiho took it carefully, worried he might hurt her somehow. But her grip was surprisingly strong. She held his hand tight, like a drowning person holding a rope. Then her eyes closed again, and she slept. That's when Jiho's sensors went crazy. His main display lit up with contacts. Ships, lots of ships. And they were big. "Hana, what am I looking at?" "Multiple capital-class warships entering the sector. Design unknown. They are scanning everything within 100,000 kilometers. Captain, I think they're looking for something." Jiho looked down at the sleeping child in his medical bay. Her skin was still glowing faintly, casting rainbow colors on the walls. "I think they just found it," he said. The largest ship appeared on his view screen. It was enormous, bigger than anything Jiho had ever seen. It looked like a floating cathedral made of crystal and light, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. A message came through. Jiho couldn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. It was a command. "Stop! Don't move! Wait!" Jiho looked at the child again. She was still holding his hand, even in sleep. "Well," he said to Hana, "I guess we're about to find out who she is." Outside his small, battered cargo ship, the crystal warships surrounded him like wolves around a rabbit. Jiho had saved someone important. He just didn't know how important yet. But he was about to find out. Jiho had been in dangerous situations before. He'd outrun pirates, talked his way past corrupt customs officers, and once crash-landed on a moon with no atmosphere. But he'd never had a fleet of alien warships pointing weapons at his tiny cargo ship. The child was still sleeping in his medical bay. Jiho had managed to get his computer to partially translate the symbols on her clothing. What he saw made his blood run cold. "Hana, tell me I'm reading this wrong." "You are not reading it wrong, Captain. According to the translation, the child is identified as Crown Princess Lyrae, heir to something called the Crystalline Imperium. A princess. I rescued a princess." Jiho ran his hands through his hair. "Of course I did, because my life wasn't complicated enough." The largest warship sent another message. This time the translation was clearer. "Surrender the child immediately. Prepare for boarding. Any resistance will result in immediate destruction." Jiho looked at his weapon systems. He had 2 small defense cannons meant for scaring off pirates. The warship outside could probably destroy his entire ship with one shot. "Send a reply," Jiho said. "Tell them the child is alive and safe. Tell them I'm a human cargo pilot who found her escape pod. Tell them I mean no harm." As Hana sent the message, Jiho went back to check on Liray. The princess was stirring now, making small sounds. Her crystal skin was glowing brighter, which he hoped was a good sign. "Hey there," he said softly. "How are you feeling?" Liray's eyes opened. She looked at Jiho for a long moment, then around the small medical bay. Fear flashed across her face, and she tried to sit up. "Easy, easy," Jiho said, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe. You had an accident, but you're okay now." She said something in a language that sounded like wind chimes and bells. Jiho's translator struggled with it. "I don't understand," he said, "but don't be scared. I'm Jiho. I found you." Liray reached up and touched his face with one small hand. Her touch was cool and smooth like polished stone. She said something else, and this time his translator caught a word. "Safe." "Yes," Jiho smiled. "You're safe." That's when his ship shook, not from weapons fire but from something docking with his airlock. The warning lights flashed. "Captain, they're boarding," Hana announced. "Multiple life signs, all armed." Jiho stood up, putting himself between the doorway and the child. If they wanted to hurt her, they'd have to go through him first. It wasn't much of a defense, but it was all he had. The airlock opened. Heavy footsteps echoed through his small ship. Then they appeared in the doorway, two massive warriors covered in crystal armor that glowed with inner light. They carried weapons that hummed with power. But it was the figure between them that made Jiho forget to breathe. She was tall and graceful, made entirely of living crystal. Her body shifted between solid and translucent, catching the light and breaking it into 1,000 colors. She wore a crown that seemed to be part of her own body, growing from her head like ice formations. Her face was beautiful and terrible, with eyes that held the depth of space itself. This was a queen. There was no doubt about it. Queen Athira looked at Jiho for just a moment. Then her eyes found Liray lying on the medical bed. The queen's composed expression shattered like glass. "Liray!" She rushed forward and Jiho quickly stepped aside. The queen gathered the child into her arms, and for several moments the only sound was the queen speaking rapidly in her wind chime language. Liray wrapped her arms around her mother's neck. "Mama," she said, and that word needed no translation. Jiho stood awkwardly near the wall, not sure what to do. One of the guards watched him carefully, weapons still ready. Queen Athira finally looked up at Jiho. Her eyes were wet with tears, actual tears that crystallized as they fell, creating tiny diamonds that clinked softly on the floor. She said something, and a small device on her belt beeped. When she spoke again, Jiho heard it in English. "You saved her, my daughter. You saved her life." "I just did what anyone would do," Jiho said. "No." The queen stood, still holding Liray. "Not anyone. The beacon showed me everything. The pod systems recorded your actions. You risked your ship to reach her. You gave her your own oxygen. You could have died." Jiho shrugged. "She's a kid. I couldn't just leave her." Something like wonder crossed the queen's face. She turned to one of her guards and spoke in her own language. The guard looked shocked, but nodded. "I am Athira, Queen of the Crystalline Imperium," she said to Jiho. "My advisor Velthros is analyzing the pod systems now. He tells me that you performed what your species calls CPR. You breathed your air into my daughter's lungs. You touched her with your bare hands and carried her to safety. You sang to her. I didn't know what else to do," Jiho admitted. "I'm not a doctor. I'm just a cargo pilot. You are more than that." Athira's voice was firm. "In our culture, there is a sacred bond called the Talathor. It forms when someone shares the breath of life with another, when they risk everything for someone not of their blood. You have formed this bond with my daughter, and through her, with me. I'm not sure I understand. It means you have become family, Ethera said simply. The life debt is absolute, but this is deeper than debt. You held my dying child and brought her back. You are now bound to the royal house. You are under our protection. And, she paused, we would ask that you come with us to our homeworld. Come with you? Jiho looked around his small ship. I appreciate the offer, really, but I've got cargo runs scheduled. I can't just... Please. The word was soft, and when Jiho looked at the queen, he saw she was no longer the terrifying ruler. She was just a mother who'd almost lost her child. Lyrae has bonded with you. Look. The princess had her head on her mother's shoulder, but her eyes were fixed on Jiho. She was holding one small hand out toward him. She feels safe with you, Ethera said. I do not know why. Perhaps it is because you were the first face she saw when she thought she would die. Perhaps it is something deeper, but I can see she does not want you to leave. And I, the queen's voice wavered. I would feel better knowing you were near, at least until she recovers fully. Jiho looked at the little princess. She was still watching him with those deep blue eyes. As he watched, she said something in her language. What did she say? Jiho asked. Ethera's expression softened. She called you her hero, and she asked if you would come home with her. Jiho thought about his cargo runs, his scheduled deliveries, his simple, quiet life flying between stations, bothering nobody, staying free. Then he looked at Lyrae's face and knew he couldn't say no. Okay, he said. I'll come, but just until she's better. Just until she doesn't need me anymore. Thank you. Ethera bowed her head slightly, which surprised the guards. Your ship will be brought to our homeworld under escort. You may bring anything you wish. You will be treated as an honored guest. Can I bring Hana, my ship's computer? Of course. As the queen carried Lyrae toward the airlock, the princess reached back toward Jiho. Without thinking, he followed and took her small hand. She held on tight and smiled. Veltros, the advisor, appeared at the airlock. He was older than the queen, with crystal skin that held layers of blue and silver. He looked at Jiho with an expression that was hard to read. Human, he said, his English perfect. What you have done is unprecedented. No outsider has ever formed the Talathor with our royal family. There will be complications, questions, perhaps danger. Are you trying to scare me? I am trying to warn you. Our world is not like yours. Our ways are different. You may find you have stepped into something far larger than a simple rescue. Jiho looked at Lyrae, who was still holding his hand. Yeah, well, too late now, I guess. As he walked through the airlock onto the massive crystalline warship, Jiho realized his simple life was over. He'd saved a princess. Now he was going to meet an empire. He just hoped he survived it. The crystalline homeworld was called Lumithere, and it was the most beautiful thing Jiho had ever seen. From space, it looked like a jewel catching the light of twin suns. Cities made of living crystal rose from the surface, glowing with soft light. Everything was precise, perfect, and completely alien. Jiho's quarters in the royal palace were bigger than his entire ship. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that changed color with his mood. The furniture looked like it had been grown rather than built. He had servants who appeared the moment he thought about needing something. It was driving him crazy. I just want a sandwich, Jiho said to the servant who had brought him a plate of something that glowed and smelled like flowers. Bread, meat, cheese, simple. The servant looked confused. This is our finest sustenance crystal, honored guest. It contains all necessary nutrients. But does it taste like a sandwich? I do not understand the question. Jiho sighed and ate the glowing thing. It didn't taste bad, exactly. It just didn't taste like anything. After 2 weeks in the palace, he missed flavor. He missed earth food. He missed his small ship's kitchen where he could make instant noodles at 3 in the morning. Most of all, he missed freedom. The palace guards were polite but firm. Jiho couldn't leave the royal wing without an escort. When he asked to visit his ship, they gave him gentle excuses. The queen needed him nearby, the princess needed him close. It wasn't safe for him to wander alone. He was a prisoner in a golden cage. The only good part was Lyrae. The little princess had recovered quickly, and now she followed Jiho everywhere. She taught him words in her language. He taught her words in English. She showed him how to make the palace crystals sing by touching them in certain ways. He showed her pictures of Earth, of oceans and forests and cities. "Your world has no crystals?" she asked one day, her translator device making her voice sound like bells. "We have some crystals, but mostly we have dirt and water and plants, living things that aren't made of crystal." "That sounds strange," but she smiled. "I want to see it someday." "Maybe you will." Queen Aethera visited them often. At first, her presence made Jiho nervous. She was a queen after all, powerful, ancient, important. But slowly, he realized she was also just a mother who had almost lost her child. She watched Lyrae play with a mix of love and fear. One evening, after Lyrae had fallen asleep, Aethera asked Jiho to walk with her in the palace gardens. The gardens were strange and beautiful, filled with crystal plants that chimed softly in the wind. "You are not happy here," Aethera said. It wasn't a question. Jiho considered lying, but decided against it. "The palace is beautiful. Everyone is kind, but I'm not meant for this life. I'm a pilot. I need space around me, not walls." "I understand." Aethera touched a crystal flower, and it lit up under her hand. "I sometimes feel the same. These walls can be a prison, even for a queen." "Then why keep me here?" "Because Lyrae needs you, and—" Aethera hesitated. "Because I need you. Do you know what it is like, Jiho, to be alone even when surrounded by thousands? Everyone who speaks to me sees only the crown. They tell me what I want to hear, not what I need to hear. But you treat me like a person." Jiho wasn't sure what to say to that. He settled on honesty. "You are a person who happens to be a queen, but still a person." Aethera smiled, and for a moment she looked younger, less burdened. "This is why your presence matters. You remind me of who I am beneath the crown." They walked in silence for a while. Then Aethera spoke again, and her voice was troubled. "There is something I must tell you. The attack on Lyrae. It was not an accident. Someone tried to kill my daughter." Jiho stopped walking. "What?" "Her escape pod did not fail naturally. It was sabotaged. We found evidence of tampering. Someone wanted her dead." "Who would do that?" "That is what we are trying to discover." Aethera's light flickered like a candle in wind. "My advisors are investigating, but they find nothing. Our people do not think like this. Conspiracy and murder are alien to our nature. We are too honest, too direct. We do not understand how to hide such things." Jiho's mind started working. Back in human space, conspiracy was common. Pirates, criminals, corrupt officials, they all worked in shadows. He'd learned to think like them, to stay alive. "Who benefits from Lyrae's death?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "In human investigations, we follow the money and the power. Who gains if the princess dies? Who wants to stop whatever you're planning?" Aethera looked at him with surprise. "That is a very practical way to think. I am planning to open our borders, to form alliances with younger species. Many nobles oppose this. They believe we should remain isolated, pure. There's your answer. One of those nobles tried to kill Lyrae to stop you. But that would require lying, deception, hiring criminals." "Our nobles would never—" "Wouldn't they?" Jiho asked gently. If they believed strongly enough that your plans would destroy everything they love. People do terrible things when they're afraid. Ethera was quiet for a long time. If you are right, then my daughter is still in danger. The assassins will try again. Maybe. Unless we find them first. Jiho hesitated. I could help if you want. I'm good at thinking like criminals. It's how I survived in the gray markets of human space. You would do this? Lyrae is under my protection now, right? That's what the Talathor means? So yeah, I'll help protect her. Ethera reached out and took Jiho's hand. Her touch was cool and solid. Thank you. I will speak with Velthros. He will not like taking advice from a human, but he is practical. He will listen. Over the next week, Jiho worked with Velthros and the royal investigators. At first, the advisor was cold and dismissive, but Jiho asked questions nobody else thought to ask. Who had access to Lyrae's ship? Who knew her schedule? Who had the skills to sabotage a royal vessel? Look at the money, Jiho insisted. Someone had to pay for this. Assassins don't work for free. Velthros reluctantly began checking financial records. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Money moving through complex channels, payments to mercenary groups, all the trails led back to one source, Duke Mithros, one of the oldest and most respected nobles in the empire. It cannot be, Velthros said when they confirmed it. Duke Mithros is a pillar of our society. His family has served the crown for generations. His family has also been the most vocal against opening your borders, Jiho pointed out. He's published essays, given speeches. He believes contact with younger species will corrupt your empire. But to kill a child? He probably doesn't see it that way. He sees it as protecting his civilization. People convince themselves that terrible things are necessary. Velthros looked at the evidence spread across the table. If this is true, we must arrest him immediately. No, Jiho said. If we arrest him now, his supporters will call it political persecution. We need proof that's undeniable. We need to catch him in the act. What do you suggest? Jiho thought about all the cheap detective shows he'd watched during long cargo runs. We set a trap. We let it leak that I've found evidence. The assassins will have to move against me or lose their chance. When they come, we'll be ready. That puts you in danger. Yeah, Jiho said. But that's okay. I've been in danger before, and this time I'll have an entire royal guard backing me up. Velthros studied Jiho for a long moment. You are not what I expected from a human. I thought your species was selfish, chaotic, short-sighted. But you think ahead. You plan. You sacrifice for others. Humans can be all those things, Jiho admitted. Selfish and selfless, chaotic and careful. We're complicated, but when we care about someone, we go all in. That's just how we're built. The Queen was right about you, Velthros said. You are valuable to us. I apologize for my earlier coldness. No problem. I get it. I'm the weird alien in your perfect crystal palace. They spent the next 2 days preparing the trap. Jiho made sure rumors spread that he'd found evidence against someone high-ranking. He made himself visible, walking in the gardens, attending dinners, looking like an easy target. Queen Ethera didn't like the plan. It is too dangerous, she said. If something goes wrong, it won't, Jiho said with more confidence than he felt. Trust me. I do trust you. That is what frightens me. The attack came during the Festival of Light, a ceremony in the royal gardens where the entire court gathered. Jiho stood near Lyrae and the Queen, trying to look relaxed while his heart pounded. That's when he saw them. 3 figures in crystal armor that looked just slightly wrong. The armor was too dark, augmented with technology that wasn't standard royal guard equipment. Ethera, he said quietly. Behind the north pillar, 3 soldiers. They're not yours. The queen's light flickered as she saw them. She moved Lyrae behind her just as the assassin struck. What happened next was chaos. The assassins moved fast, faster than any crystalline should be able to move. Whatever augments they had made them deadly. But the royal guards were ready. Veltros had positioned them perfectly, hidden among the crowds. The battle erupted across the beautiful gardens. And Jiho realized, as crystal weapons fired and people screamed, that his trap had worked. Now they just had to survive it. The royal gardens became a battlefield in seconds. Crystal weapons fired beams of concentrated light that cut through stone and metal. The assassins moved through the crowd like shadows, heading straight for Queen Ethera and Princess Lyrae. The royal guards responded immediately. Veltros was suddenly there, his ceremonial armor transforming into battle gear. He placed himself between the queen and the attackers, his weapon blazing. "Get the princess to safety!" he shouted. Jiho grabbed Lyrae's hand. The little girl was frozen in fear, her crystal skin flickering wildly. "Come on," he said, pulling her toward the palace entrance. "We need to move now." But one of the assassins saw them. He was faster than the others, his augmented body letting him leap over the guards. He landed directly in Jiho's path, blocking their escape. "The human," the assassin said, his voice distorted by his armor. "Duke Mithros wants you dead." "Yeah, I figured." Jiho pushed Lyrae behind him. "You're going to have to get through me first." The assassin laughed. "You are soft, weak. This will be easy." He raised his weapon, a blade of pure energy that hummed with power. Jiho had no weapon. He wasn't a fighter. He was just a cargo pilot who'd learned to survive by being smart and running when necessary. But there was nowhere to run. Lyrae was behind him, and he'd be damned if he let anyone hurt her. The assassin struck. Jiho dove to the side, feeling the heat of the energy blade pass inches from his face. He rolled, grabbed a piece of broken crystal from the ground, and threw it at the assassin's face. It was a desperate move, almost silly. But it made the assassin flinch for just a second. That second was enough. A royal guard tackled the assassin from the side, and they both went down hard. Jiho didn't wait. He grabbed Lyrae and ran. Behind them, the battle raged. More guards arrived. The assassins were skilled, but they were outnumbered. Veltros fought with precision and power, each strike calculated and devastating. But there was a fourth assassin. Nobody had seen him. He'd been hiding, waiting for his moment. He appeared right in front of Jiho, stepping out from behind a crystal pillar. This one was different, larger, more dangerous. His armor was covered in symbols that marked him as something special, an elite killer. "End of the line, human," the assassin said. Lyrae screamed. The sound cut through Jiho like a knife. He looked into the assassin's blank faceplate and knew, absolutely knew, that he was about to die. This being was faster, stronger, and trained for killing. But Jiho was human, and humans had one talent that evolution had given them through millions of years of survival. When backed into a corner, when everything was lost, humans fought anyway. The assassin lunged with his energy blade. Jiho didn't think, he just moved. He shoved Lyrae as hard as he could, sending her tumbling away from danger. Then he did something completely insane. He charged straight at the assassin. The blade caught him across the ribs. Pain exploded through Jiho's body, white-hot and terrible. But Queen Ethera had secretly given him personal shields woven into his clothing. They couldn't stop the blade completely, but they slowed it down, weakened it. What should have cut him in half only burned deep into his side. Jiho slammed into the assassin with all his weight. It was like hitting a wall. But the assassin hadn't expected it. Nobody charges straight at a trained killer. They went down together. The assassin tried to bring his blade around for another strike, but Jiho grabbed his wrist with both hands. Blood was running down Jiho's side, hot and wet. His vision was blurring. But he held on. "You will die!" the assassin hissed. "Maybe," Jiho gasped, "but not before you." The assassin was stronger. He was trained. But Jiho had something the assassin didn't understand. He had rage. Pure, burning, human rage. This thing had tried to hurt Lyrae, had tried to kill a child. And that was something Jiho could not forgive. He headbutted the assassin's faceplate. His forehead split open and blood ran into his eyes. But he heard something crack. He did it again, and again. The assassin tried to throw him off, but Jiho wrapped his legs around him and held on like a parasite. He didn't know how to fight properly. He just knew how to refuse to let go. "Get off me!" the assassin shouted, his calm breaking. "No!" Jiho's voice was barely human. "No!" Then the royal guards were there. They pulled Jiho off and restrained the assassin. Veltros appeared, his armor scorched but intact. He looked at Jiho with something like shock. "You charged him. You charged a trained assassin with no weapon, no armor, no training." He was going to hurt Lyrae. Jiho collapsed to his knees, his hand pressed to his bleeding side. "Couldn't let that happen. You should be dead. Any sane being would have run or surrendered." "Yeah, well." Jiho tried to smile but couldn't. Humans aren't always sane. The world tilted. Strong hands caught him before he fell. Through his fading vision, Jiho saw Queen Athira's face. She was crying again, those diamond tears falling and shattering on the ground. "Foolish human," she said, her voice breaking. "Brave, foolish human, you should have run. Couldn't, made a promise." Jiho's words were slurring. "Said I'd protect her. And you did. You kept your promise." The last thing Jiho saw before darkness took him was Lyrae's face. She was crying too, but she was safe. That was what mattered. When Jiho woke up, everything hurt. He was in the Royal Medical Wing, lying on a bed that adjusted to his body perfectly. Machines beeped softly around him. His side was bandaged with something that felt cool against his skin. Someone was holding his hand. Jiho turned his head slowly and saw Queen Athira sitting beside his bed. She looked tired. Her usual glow dimmed, but when she saw his eyes open, she brightened immediately. "You're awake." Her voice was soft. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." 3 days? Jiho's throat was dry. "What happened?" "You nearly died. The assassin's blade cut deep. But our doctors are skilled and your human biology is remarkably resilient. You will heal." "Lyrae." "Safe. She hasn't left the medical wing. She's sleeping in the chair next to you right now." Jiho turned his head more and saw the little princess curled up in a chair, wrapped in a blanket. Even in sleep, she had one hand stretched out toward him, as if making sure he was still there. "We caught all the assassins," Athira continued. "They confessed. Duke Mithros was arrested. The evidence was undeniable. He will face justice." "Good." "But Jiho, what you did," Athira squeezed his hand. "I watched you fight. I saw you charge an assassin that could have killed you with one strike. You didn't hesitate. You didn't run. Even bleeding and hurt, you fought." "Had to." "No, you chose to. That is different." Athira's voice held wonder. "I have studied many species across the galaxy. I have read about humanity, but I never truly understood until I saw you fight. Your species, you are weak compared to most, small, fragile, but you refuse to give up. When you should die, you fight anyway. When you should run, you charge forward. It is incredible." Jiho managed a weak smile. "We're too stubborn to quit. It's kind of our thing." "It is more than stubbornness. It is will. Pure, unbreakable will. You would rather die than abandon those you protect." "I have never seen anything like it." "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "It is a powerful thing." Athira leaned closer. "It is a dangerous thing. It is the reason your species has survived when you should have failed. And it is why—" She paused. "Why I want you to stay." "Stay?" Yes, not as a guest anymore. Not because Lyrae needs you, though she does, but because I need you, because my empire needs you. You showed us something we had forgotten, that sometimes the right choice is not the safe choice or the wise choice. Sometimes the right choice is to fight for what you love, even when you know you might lose. Jiho tried to sit up, but winced at the pain. Aethera, I'm just a cargo pilot. You were a cargo pilot. Now you are the human who saved the princess twice. The human who faced assassins without fear. The human who taught a queen what courage really means. She stood up and moved to the window, looking out at the Crystal City. I am going to make you an offer, and this time, it is not a request or an obligation. It is a choice, your choice. Stay with us. Not as a prisoner, not as a guest, but as family. As royal consort and protector of the crown princess. As my advisor. As... She turned back to him. As my partner. Jiho stared at her. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I am asking you to be part of our lives. Officially. Permanently. Aethera's light flickered with something that might have been nervousness. I know it is sudden. I know we are different species, different worlds. But I have come to value you more than I can express. Your honesty, your courage, your humanity. And I believe, I hope, you might feel something for us as well. Jiho looked at Lyrae sleeping in her chair, then at Aethera, standing by the window, looking more vulnerable than any queen should. Then he thought about his ship, waiting in the royal hangar, his old life, his freedom. And he realized that the choice was already made, had been made the moment he'd pulled Lyrae from that escape pod. I need to think about it, he said. Queen Aethera nodded. Of course, take all the time you need. But they both knew that wasn't quite true. The court was waiting for an answer. The nobles were watching, and somewhere in the back of Jiho's mind, a clock was ticking. It took 2 more weeks before Jiho was healthy enough to walk without pain. The crystalline doctors said his recovery was remarkable. Humans healed faster than they'd expected. Jiho thought it was probably because humans were used to getting hurt and bouncing back. During those weeks, life in the palace changed. Lyrae stayed close to him almost every moment. She helped him walk, brought him food that actually tasted like something, and told him stories about crystalline history in her mix of English and her own language. When I was scared in the pod, she said one day, I thought I would die alone. But then you came. You were the first thing I saw when I opened my eyes. Like an angel from your Earth stories. I'm not an angel, Jiho laughed. Angels don't crash land on planets or argue with customs officers. You're my angel anyway. She hugged him carefully, mindful of his healing wound. Please don't leave. Those words stayed with him. Queen Aethera visited every day, but she never mentioned her offer again. She talked about politics, about trade routes, about art and philosophy. She showed Jiho parts of the palace he'd never seen, libraries filled with crystal books that glowed with information, gardens that sang in harmonies, workshops where artists shaped light into sculptures. This is my world, she said during one of their walks. It is beautiful, but it is also lonely. A queen cannot have friends, not really. Everyone wants something. Everyone has an agenda. Except you. You want nothing from me except honesty. That's not true, Jiho said. I want you to be happy, that's something. She looked at him for a long moment. Yes, that is something. The question haunted Jiho. Stay or go. Safety or freedom. Love or independence. Finally, he asked permission to take his ship out one last time. Aethera granted it without question. The Morning Star felt like home the moment Jiho climbed into the pilot's seat. Everything was exactly where it should be. The controls were worn smooth by his hands. The seat had the perfect dent in it. "Hello, Captain," Hana said, her voice warm. "It is good to have you back aboard." "Good to be back." Jiho started the engines and felt the familiar vibration through the floor. "Plot a course to the edge of the system. The quiet part." "May I ask where we are going?" "I need to think." He flew out past the moons, past the defensive stations, to where space was empty and dark. There he could see everything at once, the glowing jewel of Lumithere behind him, and ahead the distant stars where human colonies waited, home and home, pulling him in opposite directions. "Hana, what do you think I should do?" "I am a computer, Captain. I do not have feelings about this matter." "But you have logic, so use it. Give me the logical answer." There was a pause. "Logically, staying offers more advantages. You would have security, resources, purpose, and companionship. Leaving offers only freedom and uncertainty." "That's what I thought you'd say." Jiho stared at the stars. "But humans don't always choose the logical option." "No, you do not. You choose based on emotion, on attachment, on irrational concepts like love and loyalty. It is one of your species' great weaknesses and perhaps your greatest strength." Jiho laughed. "When did you get so philosophical?" "I have been observing humans for many years, Captain. I have learned that you are most human when you choose your heart over your head." "And what does my heart say?" "You already know." Jiho sat in his ship for hours, watching the universe turn. He thought about his parents, long dead, who had raised him to be independent and free. He thought about all the years he'd spent running from attachments, from responsibility, from anything that would tie him down. He thought about Lyrae's smile, about Ethera's laugh when he made her forget she was a queen, about feeling like he mattered for the first time in years. Freedom was being able to go anywhere. But what good was going anywhere if you had nothing worth staying for? "Hana," he said finally, "take us home." "Which home, Captain?" "The one with the people I love." When Jiho landed back at the royal hangar, Ethera was waiting for him. She stood alone on the landing platform, her light flickering nervously. Jiho walked down the ramp slowly. He stopped in front of her and tried to find the right words. There weren't any, so he just said it plain. "I'll stay. If the offer is still open, I'll stay." Ethera's light blazed bright enough to make him squint. "You will?" "On one condition." Jiho held up a hand. "I'm still human. I'm still going to make mistakes. I'm going to say the wrong thing at state dinners and forget protocol and probably embarrass you in front of important people. I can't become crystalline. I can only be me." "I would never want you to be anything else." Ethera reached out and took his hands in hers. "Your humanity is what makes you valuable. Your mistakes, your chaos, your stubborn refusal to accept how things should be. These are not flaws. They are exactly what I need." "What we need," came a small voice. Lyrae appeared from behind her mother, grinning wide. "You're staying! You're really staying!" Jiho knelt down, ignoring the protest from his healing wound. "Yeah, kid, I'm staying." Lyrae threw her arms around his neck. "I knew you would. Mama said you might leave, but I knew. Heroes don't leave." "I'm not a hero." "Yes, you are. You're my hero." The wedding ceremony was strange and beautiful. The crystallines had their traditions. Songs of light, exchanges of crystal shards, binding ceremonies that involved a lot of glowing and harmonizing. The humans, well, Jiho, had their traditions too. He insisted on exchanging rings, even though Ethera didn't wear jewelry. He wrote his own vows and made her laugh when he said them. He played an old Earth song during the reception that nobody understood, but everyone enjoyed. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely right. At the coronation ceremony, where Jiho was formally named royal consort and protector of the crown princess, he stood before the assembled nobility. They watched him with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism to outright disapproval. A human in the royal family? Impossible. Unprecedented. Wrong. Jiho didn't have a prepared speech. Veltros had written one for him, full of flowery language and proper forms. But when he stood at the podium, looking at all those perfect, crystalline faces, he knew he couldn't read someone else's words. "I know what you're thinking," he said, his voice carrying through the hall. "What's a human doing here? We're not impressive. We don't glow. We can't live for thousands of years or reshape matter with our thoughts. We're soft and small, and we die easy." The nobles shifted uncomfortably. This was not proper coronation language. "But you know what?" Jiho continued. "Humans have one talent. We survive. We've survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters. We've crawled up from caves to reach the stars. And we did it not because we're strong, but because we refuse to quit. When something should be impossible, humans do it anyway. When we should give up, we push harder. When we should run away, we stay and fight." He looked at Ithera, standing beside him. "Your queen asked me to stay. Not because I'm powerful or important, but because sometimes what you need isn't more perfection. Sometimes you need someone who's willing to get messy, make mistakes, and try impossible things. Someone who'll fight for you even when they should run. Someone who chooses to stay when leaving would be easier." Jiho turned back to the nobles. "I'm human. I'm going to mess up your protocols and ask stupid questions and probably do things that make you uncomfortable. But I'll also protect the people I love with everything I have. I'll tell the truth even when it's not convenient. And I'll never ever give up on this family or this empire, because that's what humans do. We pick our people, and then we're loyal unto death." He paused. "So if you're asking what a human is doing here, I'm choosing to stay. That's what I'm doing. And if you don't like it, well, talk to the queen. She's the one who asked me." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, from the back of the hall, someone started a slow clap. It was Veltros. The old advisor was smiling. "Well said, human. Well said." Others joined in. Not everyone. Some nobles left with stiff backs and disapproving frowns. But enough. Enough to matter. Years passed. Jiho never quite fit into palace life, but he stopped trying to. He created his own space in the royal family. Part advisor, part protector, part court jester. He taught Lyrae and her younger siblings about Earth, about human history and art, and the beautiful chaos of organic life. The children were strange and wonderful, part crystal and part flesh, glowing with inner light but bleeding red when they scraped their knees. He changed the crystalline imperium in small ways. He convinced Ithera to open the borders wider, to invite diplomats from younger species. He suggested flexible trade agreements instead of rigid contracts. He taught the royal guard to think like humans, to expect the unexpected and plan for chaos. And Ithera changed him. She taught him patience, the value of tradition, the weight of responsibility. She showed him that commitment wasn't a prison, but a foundation. That love meant choosing to stay even when it was hard. 10 years after he'd pulled a dying child from an escape pod, Jiho stood on the same palace balcony where he'd first seen Lumether's beauty. His hair was starting to gray, his hands were weathered, but he was happy in a way he'd never been during his years of drifting through space alone. "Papa!" Lyrae called from below. She wasn't a child anymore. She was nearly grown, brilliant and strong and preparing to be queen someday. "Stop daydreaming and come help. The ambassadors from Earth are arriving." "Coming," Jiho called back. He looked out at his ship, the Morning Star, perfectly maintained in the royal hangar. He could leave any time he wanted. The freedom was still there. He just didn't want to use it. Ithera appeared beside him, her light warm and steady. "What are you thinking about?" About the day I found Lee Ray. About how my whole life changed in one moment. Do you regret it? Jiho took her hand and laced his fingers through hers. Not even a little bit. They stood together, looking out at the empire they were building together, an empire that was learning to be both ancient and new, perfect and messy, crystalline and human. It wasn't what either of them had expected. But it was exactly what they both needed. Somewhere in the distance, a small cargo ship entered the atmosphere. Inside were more humans, coming to see the legend, the human who'd rescued a princess and stayed to become part of her family. Jiho smiled. Let them come. He had a story to tell them. A story about a simple cargo pilot who'd made one choice that changed everything. Who'd learned that the best kind of freedom wasn't the absence of ties, but the presence of people worth being tied to. He'd rescued the Queen's child, and then he'd stayed. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And that made all the difference.